Roy Pemberton taped a notice to the door of apartment 4C and told himself he was only following procedure. 11 days later, he would stand beside a demonstration field in Millbrook's town square and watch a Place Belgian Malinois finish a flawless recall, ignore the reward in his handler's hand, and stare past 3 rows of people at the tenant Roy had already decided he understood. The dog would remember Nathan Briggs. That moment would change Roy's mind about one accusation. It would not erase $600 in unpaid rent. It would not repair 2 years of Nathan's life. And it would not make everyone in Millbrook suddenly become kinder than they had been the week before. But on that gray Tuesday morning, Roy knew none of that. All he saw was a tenant behind on rent and a German shepherd 2 neighbors had described as dangerous. Millbrook, Pennsylvania, was built around a courthouse square, an old brick library, and a river that flooded every few springs. People there knew which marriages were failing, whose son had lost his job, and which family had stopped attending church long before anyone involved had said so aloud. Fairview Apartments sat 2 blocks from Main Street. It was a 3-story brick building with thin walls, narrow stairwells, and doors that shut harder than they needed to. Roy owned in Fairview and 2 smaller properties across town. He was not a cruel man by reputation. He was simply most comfortable when a problem fit inside a form. Nathan Briggs had lived in apartment 4C for 2 years. He was 44, tall, and still carried the outline of the runner he had once been, though 3 spinal surgeries had changed the way he moved. He rose carefully from chairs. He took stairs one at a time on bad mornings. When pain tightened across his lower back, he held his breath until it passed and pretended he had only stopped to think. He worked overnight at a warehouse outside town, stocking pallets and checking inventory. He came home before sunrise, walked his dog while the sidewalks were empty, and slept behind blackout curtains until early afternoon. Most tenants knew him only as the quiet man in 4C. They did not know he had served 11 years in the Army and eventually reached the rank of staff sergeant. During his last 4 years, he had worked as a lead instructor in a regional military police K-9 program, teaching handlers how to read stress before it became panic and how to build obedience without destroying trust. 3 years earlier, an improvised explosive device outside a forward operating base had ended that work. Nathan survived. His spine did not come away untouched. The year that followed was measured in surgeries, rehabilitation appointments, paperwork, and decisions made by people who never had to watch him cross a room. His medical discharge became final 2 years ago. His wife, Elena, had died a year before the explosion, killed in a highway accident while Nathan was still deployed. By the time he returned home for good, the house they had shared had already been emptied by relatives who believed they were helping. Nathan kept only a box of photographs, her winter coat, and a folded flag he never displayed. Nova came to him shortly after his discharge. She was a retired 10-year-old German shepherd with a graying muzzle and the patient eyes of a dog that had spent years watching people reveal themselves. She had served as a demonstration and training assistance dog. She was steady around crowds, sirens, shouting, and the controlled noise of firearms. But a door slamming inside a narrow hallway could still pull an old reflex out of her. Years before Nathan met her, a poorly managed training exercise had trapped Nova between 2 metal doors, while handlers repeatedly created impact noise around her. She had recovered well enough to work, but the sound of a door striking a frame in a confined space sometimes made her bark once or twice and lunge away from the sound. She had never bitten anyone. She had never charged a neighbor. Still, Nathan took the problem seriously. At Fairview, he walked her around the far side of the stairwell and waited when he heard someone coming. Avoidance was not training, he knew, but some days pain and exhaustion left room only for management. Denise Fowler lived 1 floor above him. Twice in the past month, Denise had entered the stairwell just as the heavy fire door slammed behind her. Both times Nova startled and barked sharply. Nathan immediately moved the dog back and apologized. Denise heard the bark. She saw the size of the dog. She did not notice that Nova retreated instead of advancing, or that Nathan had placed his own body between them. After the second incident, Denise called Roy. By the end of the week, she had described Nova as aggressive to 2 other tenants. Neither had seen the dog threaten anyone, but both signed a note saying they were concerned about safety in the building. Roy did not speak to Nathan before preparing the notice. The paper on apartment 4C stated that Nathan was $600 behind on rent and that complaints had been made about a dangerous animal. It warned that if the issues were not resolved, Roy intended to terminate the tenancy and file a landlord-tenant complaint. Nathan found it after his shift, still wearing his warehouse uniform. Nova sat beside him while he read it. Her tail was still. Her eyes moved from the paper to his face. Nathan read the notice a second time, then unlocked the door. He called Roy's office that afternoon. "Mr. Pemberton, I received the notice." "Then you know where things stand." "I know I'm behind," Nathan said. "I'm expecting a disability back payment adjustment by the 15th. I can clear the balance when it comes." "And the dog?" Nova has a startled response to the stairwell door. "She has never bitten or threatened anyone. I can change our schedule and work the trigger more directly. I have tenants afraid to use the stairs." "Then let me speak with them, or bring in someone qualified to evaluate her." Roy paused, but not because he was considering the proposal. "I have written complaints," he said. "I can't ignore those." "You ignored asking me what happened." Roy's voice hardened. "You have a rent balance and an animal complaint. Resolve both before the deadline on that notice, or I file." The line went quiet. Nathan could have told him about the Army. He could have listed the agencies whose dogs he had trained. He could have explained that Nova had spent more hours working safely around frightened recruits than Roy had spent standing in that stairwell. Instead, he said, "Understood." Roy ended the call. Nathan set the phone on the kitchen counter. Nova moved close and leaned the side of her body against his leg. It was a behavior she had learned years earlier for handlers returning from difficult exercises. Steady pressure, no demand, something physical to interrupt a mind moving too quickly. Nathan rested a hand between her ears. "I know," he said. "Easy." That night at the warehouse, he counted the same pallet twice. Miguel Santos, who worked the neighboring aisle, noticed. "You all right, Nate?" "Landlord trouble." "The place on 3rd? Nathan nodded. "My cousin rented there," Miguel said. "Pemberton isn't the worst landlord in Pennsylvania. He just likes paper more than people." Nathan looked back at his clipboard. Paper usually wins. Miguel studied him for a moment. "You need a shift covered?" "I need more shifts, not fewer." "I can ask the supervisor about Sunday." Nathan nodded once. "I'd take it." He did not mention the dog complaint. He did not mention the court filing Roy had threatened. He had learned that telling the entire truth often invited people to offer help he was not yet ready to accept. Over the next several days, the story traveled through Fairview faster than any correction could have. The dog in 4C became the dangerous dog in 4C. Nathan's overdue rent became proof that he was unreliable in every other part of his life. At the mailboxes, conversations stopped when he approached. One tenant waited inside her car until Nathan and Nova had crossed the parking lot. Nathan noticed. He said nothing. On Friday afternoon, someone knocked on his door. The woman outside wore a Millbrook police uniform and held her cap beneath one arm. She was in her early 30s with dark hair pulled back tightly and the cautious expression of someone unsure whether she would be remembered. Nathan looked at her nameplate, Lynn. Then he saw the old scar near her left wrist. "Officer Casey Lynn," he said. "How is Diesel?" Her face changed. "You remember him?" "Malinois, 8 months old when you brought him in, afraid of the leash clip, couldn't hold a stay longer than 10 seconds if someone moved behind him." Casey laughed once, surprised. "He can hold it now." "I would hope so." "I saw your name on a noise complaint log," she said. "I thought it might be you, but I wasn't sure." Nathan's hand remained on the edge of the door. A complaint log. It wasn't a criminal report. The landlord called, asking what he should do about a supposedly aggressive dog. Nobody at the desk had seen the dog. Nova was lying near the window behind him. At the sound of Casey's voice, she raised her head but did not stand. Casey looked past Nathan. "That's her? That's Nova. She doesn't look particularly interested in attacking me." "She isn't." Casey shifted her cap to the other hand. "I told the desk sergeant that you used to work with the regional program. I didn't tell them anything else. It wasn't my story to tell." Nathan appreciated that more than he said. "Thank you." "Millbrook is holding Canine Appreciation Day next Saturday," Casey continued. 4 teams, public demonstrations, fundraising table. Diesel will be there. Nathan said nothing. "You should come by." "I don't do well in crowds anymore." "You can stand at the back." "That sounds like a plan designed by someone who knows I'll say no." Casey smiled. "It is. Nathan almost returned the smile. Maybe. They both understood that maybe meant probably not. After Casey left, Nathan sat on the edge of the couch. Nova came over and rested her head against his knee. He remembered Diesel as a nervous young dog hiding behind Casey's legs. He remembered spending an extra hour after formal training, sitting on the concrete floor and opening and closing a leash clip until the sound stopped meaning danger. He had taught dozens of dogs that fear was information, not failure. He had been less patient with himself. The payment Nathan was counting on did not arrive on the 15th. At 9:12 that morning, a representative from the Veterans Benefits Office told him the adjustment had been approved but held for additional processing. The estimated delay was 4 to 6 weeks. Is there an emergency review? Nathan asked. The representative gave him another number. He called it. The second office gave him an online form. He completed the form, uploaded the eviction notice, and called again to confirm that it had been received. The woman on the phone was polite. She could verify that his request was in the system. She could not tell him when anyone would make a decision. Nathan asked her to send written confirmation that the back payment had been approved and was pending. That at least she could do. When he called Roy, he had the confirmation email open on his laptop. The payment is approved, Nathan said. The processing date changed. I can send you the letter. I can't pay the building's bills with a letter. I can give you $150 from Friday's paycheck, then $150 every 2 weeks until the balance clears. When the back payment arrives, I'll pay whatever remains. Roy exhaled into the phone. And if it takes 6 weeks? Then I keep paying from work. You told me the 15th. I told you what the agency told me. I've already prepared the complaint. Nathan looked at Nova asleep beneath the table. The dog allegation isn't true. The rent balance is... Yes, Nathan said. It is. Roy seemed almost disappointed that Nathan had not argued. I'll file at the district court tomorrow, he said. A judge can decide the rest. After the call, Nathan printed the benefits letter, his recent pay stubs, and a proposed payment schedule. He placed them in a folder. Then he sat at the table for several minutes with both hands flat against the wood. Nova leaned against his leg. This time he noticed. I'm here, he told her, though he was not sure which of them needed to hear it. That evening, Nathan asked the warehouse supervisor for every additional shift his back could tolerate. The supervisor gave him Sunday and warned him not to lift alone. Nathan agreed. On Thursday, before his regular shift, he stopped at the diner on Main Street for coffee. 2 women in the booth behind him were discussing Fairview Apartments. One of them lowered her voice only after saying, "The man with the aggressive dog." The other wondered whether rents would fall if Roy kept accepting that kind of tenant. Nathan drank half his coffee. He left the usual tip. He did not turn around. He had survived rooms where strangers wanted him dead. What unsettled him about Millbrook was not danger. It was how little evidence people required before deciding who deserved to belong. At Fairview, he stopped avoiding the stairwell trigger. Each evening when the hallway was quiet, he worked with Nova for 10 minutes. He began far from the fire door. He opened it only a few inches and allowed it to settle against the frame. When Nova remained calm, he marked the behavior and gave her a piece of chicken. The first night, every click tightened her body. The second night, she barked once when the door moved faster than Nathan intended. He ended the session, walked her outside, and began again later at a greater distance. By the 4th evening, she still flinched, but she looked toward Nathan instead of pulling away. That was progress, not a cure. On the 5th evening, Denise appeared at the top of the stairs while Nathan and Nova were sitting on the landing. She stopped immediately. Nova saw her. Her ears moved forward, then back. Nathan shortened the leash without pulling it tight. "What are you doing?" Denise asked. "Working on the thing that frightened you." Denise looked at the door. "The barking?" The door triggers her. It's a startled response. She sounded aggressive. She sounded afraid. Denise's hand tightened around the mail she was carrying. Nathan continued before she could answer. "That doesn't mean you weren't scared. I should have addressed it sooner instead of only walking around the stairwell." Denise looked at Nova. The dog remained beside Nathan, watching but not advancing. "Will she do it again?" "She might," Nathan said. "Training reduces a response. It doesn't erase history." The answer did not reassure Denise as much as a promise would have. It was also the truth. Nathan stood slowly, pain catching halfway through the movement. He moved Nova to the far wall and left the stairs clear. You can pass. Denise descended one step at a time. When the fire door shifted behind her, Nova's shoulders tightened. She looked at Nathan. Easy. That Nova stayed where she was. At the bottom, Denise glanced back. She did not apologize, but she had seen something different from the story she had been telling. Friday afternoon, Roy filed a landlord-tenant complaint at the local magisterial district court. The filing sought possession of the apartment and the unpaid balance. The alleged animal violation was included as an additional lease issue. Nathan received notice that a hearing would be scheduled. Nothing about the paper meant he would be removed the next day. He knew that. It still changed the shape of the apartment. The boxes in the closet no longer looked like storage. They looked like preparation. At work that night, Miguel found Nathan standing outside the loading dock during break, one hand braced against the concrete wall. How bad? Miguel asked. Nathan looked toward the line of trailers beyond the fence. Court filing. Miguel was quiet for a moment. I have 300 saved. No. You didn't even let me finish. I know what you were going to say. It wouldn't be charity. It would still be your money. Miguel rubbed the back of his neck. You're stubborn. So I've been told. Then take my Sunday shift too. Nathan finally looked at him. Your wife will kill you if you give away that overtime. She'll kill me if I let a friend sleep in his truck without asking. Nathan's first instinct was to deny that Miguel was his friend. The word felt larger than what they usually allowed between pallet racks and coffee breaks. Instead, he said, one shift. Miguel nodded. One shift. Saturday afternoon arrived cold and bright. Nathan had not planned to attend K-9 Appreciation Day. He had slept badly after work and woke with pain running down one leg. Nova, however, had spent most of the previous 2 days inside. At 1:30, Nathan clipped on her leash. We'll walk past, he told her. That's all. The town square was 6 blocks away. By the time they reached it, a modest crowd had gathered around a rope demonstration field. Children sat on their parents' shoulders. A local rescue group had set up folding tables. 4 K-9 teams waited near patrol vehicles at the edge of the grass. Roy Pemberton stood beside a sponsor banner near the front. His company had donated money to the event, something Nathan had not known. Denise was nearby with her 9-year-old grandson. Neither noticed Nathan at the back of the crowd. Nova sat at his left side. The noise did not trouble her. Working dog demonstrations had once been ordinary to her. Casey stood on the field with Diesel. The Malinois was older now, broader through the chest, his movements controlled and economical. The frightened puppy Nathan remembered was almost impossible to see in him. Almost. Casey ran him through a scent detection exercise. Then came a recall demonstration. She left Diesel in a downstay, walked across the field, turned and called him. Diesel launched forward. He ran directly to Casey and stopped in front of her, exactly as trained. The crowd applauded. Casey reached for the reward tug at her belt. Diesel did not take it. His head lifted. His nose moved once, then again. He turned toward the back of the crowd. Diesel, Casey said. His ears came forward. His tail began to move. Not the high, fast wag of excitement, but a low, uncertain sweep. He looked at Casey, then back toward Nathan. Casey followed his gaze. For a second, she could not find what he saw. Then she did. Casey clipped Diesel's leash before walking him off the field. She did not allow him to break position or pull through the crowd. She finished the demonstration, thanked the audience, and handed the microphone to another officer. Only then did she lead Diesel toward the back row. The closer they came, the more his composure changed. He remained under control, but his breathing quickened, his eyes fixed on Nathan. Nova stood. Nathan gave her a quiet command, and she settled again beside him. Casey stopped several feet away. I think he knows you. Nathan looked at Diesel. The Malinois stared back with the same intense concentration he had shown as a young dog whenever he was trying to understand what was expected. Nathan raised one hand without thinking, 2 fingers down, palm turned slightly inward. It was an old focus signal used during Diesel's foundation training before Casey had refined his operational commands. Diesel sat immediately. His tail struck the grass once. Nathan's throat tightened. Good, he said. The word came out quieter than he intended. Diesel leaned forward, but waited. Casey loosened the leash. Go ahead. Nathan gave the release signal. Diesel crossed the remaining distance and pressed his head against Nathan's hand. He did not jump. He did not knock Nathan down. He simply stood close enough that Nathan could feel the heat through his coat. For 2 years, Nathan had avoided the places that reminded him who he had been. The Dom had needed less than a minute to remember. A few people nearby noticed. The conversation at the rope line softened. The event announcer, seeing Casey with a civilian and 2 dogs, asked through the microphone whether everything was all right. Casey looked toward him. Everything's fine, she called. Diesel recognized one of his first trainers. That was all she said. It was enough. A small wave of applause moved through the nearest part of the crowd, uncertain at first, then warmer. Nathan wished it had not. He had not come to be seen. Roy turned from the sponsor table. Denise turned with him. Roy looked at Diesel standing beneath Nathan's hand, then at Nova sitting quietly beside his leg. He walked toward them after the next demonstration began. You trained that police dog? He asked. Nathan kept one hand on Nova's leash. I helped start him. Casey shook her head. He did more than help. Diesel was close to washing out of the program. Sergeant Briggs rebuilt his confidence from the ground up. Nathan glanced at her. Casey understood the warning. He asked for none of that to be announced, she added. Roy's expression shifted, not into admiration exactly, but into uncertainty. You never mentioned you trained police dogs. Nathan looked at him. You never asked what I knew about mine. Roy looked down at Nova. She's still the dog who barked at Mrs. Fowler. Yes. And the rent is still late. Yes. The direct answer seemed to remove the argument Roy had prepared. Casey crouched several feet from Nova, turning her body slightly sideways rather than facing the dog head-on. May I approach her? She asked Nathan. Slowly. Casey offered the back of her hand. Nova sniffed once and looked away. Casey stood. That isn't a behavioral evaluation, she told Roy, and nobody can certify a dog safe from 30 seconds in a park. But what I see right now is a controlled dog with no obvious aggressive display. She reacts to the stairwell door, Nathan said. I'm working on it. I can document the sessions and keep using the far route while we train. Roy looked at Casey. Would the department put that in writing? The department probably won't involve itself in a private lease dispute, she said. I can give you the name of an independent working dog evaluator. If Nathan agrees to the assessment, you'll have something more useful than hallway rumors. Nathan nodded. I'll agree. Denise had moved closer, though she still kept her grandson behind her Bruce chair. I saw him training her, she said. Roy turned. Denise looked uncomfortable. She didn't come at me. She stayed beside him. It was not an apology, but it was the first time Denise had corrected the story in front of someone else. Roy rubbed his thumb along the edge of the sponsor badge clipped to his coat. Bring the evaluator's report and your payment documents to my office Monday morning, he said to Nathan. We'll talk. Does that mean you're withdrawing the filing? No, Roy said. It means we'll talk. Nathan nodded. It was not mercy. It was more than he had been offered on Tuesday. On Monday, Nathan arrived at Roy's office with a folder. Inside were the VA confirmation letter, pay stubs, the schedule of additional warehouse shifts, a proposed installment plan, and a brief written assessment from an independent trainer Casey had contacted. The evaluator had observed Nova in the building that morning. The report did not call her harmless. It described a noise-triggered, startle response, noted that she recovered quickly under Nathan's control, and recommended continued desensitization, use of the alternate route during busy hours, and warning signage on the stairwell door while training continued. Roy read the report twice. Then he read the payment plan. $150 today, he said. Nathan placed a money order on the desk. $150 every 2 weeks, Roy continued. Plus current rent. Yes. That leaves you almost nothing. That isn't the same as nothing. Roy leaned back. If you miss a payment, I move the case forward. I understand. I'll agree to postpone the hearing for 30 days. If you follow the plan and the dog complaints stop, I'll dismiss the possession claim when the balance is paid. Nathan looked at him. And the dangerous animal allegation? I'll remove it from the complaint. Roy was quiet long enough that the office clock became noticeable. Because I should have investigated it before I wrote it down. Nathan waited. Roy did not offer a longer apology. Nathan did not ask for one. They signed the agreement. The court case did not disappear that day. The rent debt did not disappear. Nathan left Roy's office with less money in his account than he had possessed that morning and 4 extra warehouse shifts marked on his calendar. But he also left with his apartment key still in his pocket and Nova's name no longer attached to the word dangerous in Roy's file. Denise met him in the stairwell 2 evenings later. She stopped when she saw Nova. Nova stopped too. For a moment, none of them moved. I didn't know about her training history, Denise said. Nathan adjusted the grocery bag in his hand. You didn't need to know her history to ask what happened. Denise looked down. No, she said, I suppose I didn't. The fire door shifted behind her and struck the frame. Nova barked once. Denise flinched. Nathan felt the leash tighten, then loosen as Nova looked back at him. Easy. Nova's ears remained high, but she did not bark again. Denise watched the recovery. I'm still nervous around large dogs, she said. That's fair. I won't tell people she attacked me. She never did. I know. Nathan moved Nova to the wall and gave Denise room to pass. They did not become friends. After that night, Denise stopped discussing Nathan at the mailboxes. When someone else called Nova vicious, Denise said the dog had startled but had never touched her. It was a small correction. Offered later than it should have been. It still mattered. Casey called Nathan the following week. We have a new handler struggling with a young shepherd, she said. Dog shuts down under pressure. I thought you might watch a session. I'm not coming back to the program. I didn't ask you to. Nathan looked at the shoebox on the closet shelf. 1 session, Casey said. No uniform, no title. You can leave whenever you want. He nearly refused. Then he heard Elena's voice in memory, not as a sentence, but as the tone she used whenever he confused isolation with strength. What day? He asked. The training yard smelled the same as he remembered. Wet grass, leather, vehicle exhaust, and reward toys left too long in canvas bags. Nathan stayed for 40 minutes. The young shepherd shut down when his handler repeated commands too quickly. Nathan watched from outside the fence before finally saying, Stop asking for obedience while the dog is trying to feel safe. The handler looked offended. Casey told him to listen. Nathan suggested lowering the pressure, shortening the task, and rewarding the first voluntary movement instead of demanding the finished behavior. The dog took 3 steps, then 5. Nathan left before the session ended. In the parking lot, he sat inside his truck until the shaking in his hands stopped. Returning had not healed him. It had hurt. It had also reminded him that pain and usefulness could occupy the same body. 5 weeks after the original deadline, the VA back payment arrived. Nathan paid the remaining rent balance, the agreed late fee, and the money order charge. Roy dismissed the possession claim as promised. Nathan did not receive a public apology. No one in town organized a fundraiser. The people who had avoided him did not all become friendly. Some had forgotten the rumor. Others remembered only that there had been some kind of trouble involving a dog. Roy did not offer Nathan a permanent lease renewal. He told him they would review the tenancy when the existing lease ended. Nathan began putting $20 from each paycheck into an envelope marked MOVE, because hope was not the same thing as a housing plan. He continued taking occasional calls from Casey. Sometimes he went to the training yard. Sometimes he said no. The department did not hire him. There was no position waiting for a medically discharged instructor with lifting restrictions and an uncertain relationship with crowded spaces. Once, Casey arranged a small consulting payment for a weekend session. Nathan used most of it for Nova's veterinary visit. Miguel stopped offering him loans, but kept an extra cup of coffee near aisle 9 on difficult nights. Nova improved in the stairwell. She did not become a different dog. A hard slam could still make her flinch. Once every few weeks, she barked before catching herself. Nathan continued to use the wider route when the building was busy. The difference was that she recovered faster. The difference was that Nathan no longer pretended management was the same as healing. Near the end of winter, he took the old training log down from the closet shelf. Dust had collected along the lid of the shoebox. He opened the notebook to Diesel's page. The old entries were written in the compact block lettering he had used before the explosion. Startles at metal contact. Avoids raised hand. Recovers when pressure is removed. Trust first. Precision later. Nathan read the lines twice. Then he added a date beneath them. Recognize me after 2 years. He held the pen above the paper, considering whether to write more. He did not write that everything had worked out. It had not. He did not write that Millbrook finally understood him. Most of Millbrook still did not know him. He wrote one more line, still working. A door slammed in the hallway. Nova's head rose sharply. Her body tightened, but she did not bark. She looked at Nathan. Nathan set down the pen and placed one hand against her shoulder. For a moment, they stayed that way in the apartment they might or might not still occupy the following year. An old Jay who had not forgotten fear, and a man who had not defeated his past. Neither of them was fixed. Neither of them was finished. But this time when the noise came, they did not face it alone. If this story stayed with you, subscribe to Silent Ranks K9 for more stories of loyalty, courage, and second chances. Have you ever been judged before anyone heard your side of the story? Tell us in the comments.